Hello, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us today on this latest installment of the Living Leadership webinar series, which is brought to you with support from the Sylvan Laureate Foundation and the American Express Foundation. Today's webinar is titled From Startup to Scale Up, When to Say Yes and No to Investors. I'm going to be your facilitator today. My name is Eric Lin, and I'm a program manager here at the International Youth Foundation, working with the YouthActionNet program. And our presenter today is Alejandro Maza, who's the founder and CEO of OPI, Open Intelligence, which is based in Mexico City. That's a social venture that's seeking to link public policy to crowdsourced data from citizens. There's a lot of impressive technology going on back there with data mining and text mining and artificial intelligence algorithms. But today we're not going to focus on the technology. We're going to focus on impact investing and Alejandro's experience with finding and courting impact investors. So just to go over the agenda briefly, we're going to start out, and Alejandro is just going to guide us through the process of knowing if investors or looking for investors is the right move, and then to provide a broad overview of the landscape of impact investment, and then to share some of his background in his journey, and then his keys to success. So I'm going to turn it over to Alejandro now.
Thanks, Eric. I'm really excited to be here and to be able to share what we have been going through in the past months and share some of our experience that might be useful to some of you out there looking or wondering if you need investment for your social venture. And that's the first question. So before going throughout the whole process, it's really important to know if you really need investors and if it's the right time to get them. The good things about investors is that they might seem like they're the end of your financial needs, that getting money in will let you finally focus on your project and on your work and kickstart what you're doing, which is great. They can also bring in their networks and get you customers, or get you partners, and get you to other markets or countries, which could be great. And it would take a while to build on your own or with your own organization. It's great to get investors at first because in further on you might need more capital to keep growing or to expand to other markets, and if they're already there and you have a relationship with them, access to further capital would be great. And finally, the support and expertise that they can bring to the table would be amazing. And also, like, the idea of knowing that someone else is on the ship with you and is sharing the risk is a great feeling to have. So those are good reasons to get investors. But there are also some things you should worry about, or you should be careful when you're planning. Basically that first of all, the financial issues will continue. Investors might be a good solution in the short term, and they might be able to kickstart, but you will keep getting financial issues, and you will keep having to mind your budget and to build a sustainable revenue model. Secondly, you have to be very, very careful of unaligned incentives. Investors might be looking for a return on investment that beats the market, and you might be looking for social impact. And if those incentives are not aligned, there's a very good sign of trouble in the long run. Third, there's a considerable time investment in trying to get these investors, and you might be spending most of your time for some months to get investors on board and getting all the process and paperwork done before you get any actual money. So that's, I think, the most important thing you should consider if you're willing to invest that time and effort in getting other people on board. And finally, if you don't do it the right way and you get too much money or give too much away, you might be at risk of losing control of your whole enterprise. And and that could also mean trouble in the midterm and long term. So the important part here is that there are other ways to get the benefits of what investors can bring to the table. So if you for the financial needs, you might also want to look for grants or a loan, maybe if you're just a cash flow issue, or increasing your sales, or even crowdfunding, which is very popular now. So investors are not the only way out. In the networks they can bring in, you can also get access to those networks by building a very strong board and inviting people, or even people with better networks to join your board, or to participate in fellowships or join other networks. So investors aren't the only way to get access to those networks. In support and expertise, you could always find mentors, and in my experience, a lot of people are willing to mentor or to participate and coach in social enterprises. It's something exciting. It's something that they feel that they can give back by mentoring a social entrepreneur. So there's that way as well. And if you want to share the risk, you can always build partnerships with other NGOs, with other social enterprises, with the private sector, with governments, so that you don't have to carry all the risk. So in that way, investors seem like a good idea, but they're not the only way out, and they're not perfect for most of the social enterprises. Now, why did we choose to go for impact investment in our venture? Well, there are mainly three factors that made us make this decision. First of all, we are growing really, really fast, and we need capital now, and we will need capital for more in the future. So it was important for us to build strong relationships with investors now in order to get access to easy and faster capital further on, and not to be slowed down by sales or other methods for acquiring this capital. Secondly, we are working on the high risk and high return model. Basically, we're aiming for something really, really big that can have a huge social impact, and that can also bring a very high return for investors now. So that's always attractive for them. And finally, we decided to do it, but on our terms. And this has proved to be hard, but that was the only way we were going to do it. We weren't willing to sacrifice the vision, and we were willing to sacrifice the strategy that we thought what was correct in order to fit the one that an investor with not as much expertise on the field as we had thought was the best one. So given these three conditions, we decided to, even with all the costs and all the risks of getting investments, we decided to go forward with it. And before we did, and that's the thing that I think everyone should do, and this is a crucial part, you need to see that there's a fit with your investors. To do that, a very easy to use tool and that can save a lot of trouble in the long run is to figure out where in the spectrum are you. So this is spectrum where on one side you have impact, and on the other side you have finance or returns. And every social venture is somewhere in this spectrum. So you focus on impact, or you focus on getting money back and having a good return on investment. And the best ones, or the more robust ones, are a blend of both. So they can have a huge impact, while they can still have a very good return on investment, or a great, better than market return on investment. So once you figure where you are here and where your vision takes you, and where are you willing to sacrifice impact for finance, or finance for impact, you should start looking for the investors that are right for you, that are in the same place in that spectrum, or very close to where you are. And there are basically four types of investors that usually invest in social ventures. First are angels, and these are the ones I recommend you starting with. These are individuals who invest their own money in projects or ventures. And each individual has their own agenda, their own interests, and will invest in something that they feel like they can add value to, and that they they feel passionate about. So looking for angels who are on your sector or who are looking for a project that has the same balance of impact and finance would be great and would be a great place to start. The second tier or group is venture capital, or the VCs, which are like traditional like Silicon Valley firms or they're all around the world, who basically take other people's money and invest them in enterprises or projects that will bring them a higher than market return on investment. So most of the time, these VCs are focused on finance and are really good at a specific sector, even tech or consumers or energy, something. So they can add a lot of value, but they're really specific and they look for return on investment that can beat the market. The third group would be foundations. And these are your traditional foundations or organizations that have been going around for years. But right now and in the past 5 or 10 years, they started diversifying the way they give out money, other than grants and donations, into impact investment. So basically, most of them are willing to put money into an enterprise. They're expecting some return, and they're willing to wait for getting that money back. But they are focusing on impact. They don't want to get a lot of money out of it. They don't want to get rich by doing this. They already have that money. They want to have an impact. That's a good thing about this one, that if they're a right fit for you, you will get someone who's backing you up on the impact part. The dangerous part is that most of them still have the procedures and the vision of the foundations like from a while ago. So they might ask for a very hard due diligence. The process might take a super long time, and you might be asked to stick to your original plan, even if you have better information that allows you to pivot. And finally, these are great, and these have been and impact. They do want a return on investment, and they do have LPs, but the limited partners that are giving money to these funds are willing to sacrifice some of that return or the time when they are getting the money back in order to get a social impact. Most of these funds are specialized in either education or base of the pyramid or clean energy. So you might want to look for the funds that are in your spectrum and that share exactly the vision and the impact equilibrium that you're looking for. And now, what we went through, I want to give a quick overview of what OPI is doing to share our experiences and share what we're doing. Basically, we're trying to help governments and public institutions to make better public policy. Right now, the thing with governments and big institutions is that most of the time, they can't make decisions made of data because data is very hard to get by and it's all over the place. It's very costly and it takes a long time to generate new data, new data sources for making these decisions. And the analytics tools that exist in the market right now are very complex and very hard to use for them. And what we're doing is we're trying to get real-time citizen data and crowdsourcing some of this data from the citizens into the government in a more dynamic way. We've built tools that help governments and public institutions explore this data, and we're building the models for them to use the data to actually plan better public policy and evaluate the social programs they're developing and putting that money into. And basically, we have had to develop very complex technology in each of these steps. We have developed technology to generate data more easily by getting a survey app out there, or building very complex algorithms for social media mining, or getting kind of a email that can allow governments to communicate with thousands of people at the same time in a very easy to use manner. We have built a really robust architecture and infrastructure in the cloud to allow governments and institutions to handle all of these massive data sets. We have consolidated all of this data. We have built the tools and models that allow the governments to explore. And what's happening now is that governments right now in Mexico that are in charge of executing and planning the social programs that will impact the lives of millions of people, such as the Crime and Violence Prevention Program, are using our technology and the data that we're giving them to ensure that the social impact of these programs is better. So what we ended up figuring out that we should do is that instead of trying to have an impact directly on thousands of people, we could go to the programs that are already have already the resources and are already trying to have an impact on millions of people and trying to make those programs better by giving them better information and better data. And that's what we're doing right now. And we basically sell this technology to the government and institutions. So in that way, we have a sustainable model that can have a huge and is having a good social impact. And to do this, we needed a lot of money to get in the best minds and really good engineers to design and maintain these technological tools. So basically what we decided to do was to raise a round in which we got a different set of different investors. We're looking for angel investors who had expertise in finance, so they could help us make good use of the capital and help us plan for further rounds. Who had expertise in tech, developing tech and deploying technological solutions at a large scale, which is great for us in the long term, and expertise in government, who can help us navigate in how to sell to government and how governments can use our tools. And on the other hand, we're looking for institutional funds, such as traditional technological VCs, who have a lot of expertise and really, really good networks in the tech scene, so we could attract talent and get access to further capital, and impact investment funds, who really got our mission and who were willing to help us out and stay true to the social mission that started all of this. And we decided to do it this way because we thought that if we went with just one type of investor, we wouldn't be able to find the equilibrium to stick to our mission and go through. And so what has happened is that in the past, since January we started raising, and in the past 3 months we have been focusing most of my time and my partner Alberto's time in just talking to these funds and negotiating with them. So it has taken a lot of time. And right now, 3 of the funds and 5 angels have said yes, that they're willing to invest and that they're going to invest. And we're doing all the diligence and paperwork in order to get the money. So we're nearly there, but it's taking a lot more time than we planned. And that's one of our main lessons, that it'll take longer and way longer than you plan. Like, plan for something and then multiply that number by 2 or 3, because that's how long it's going to take. Especially because it's not that common. Investments in this type of projects and social ventures aren't that common. So people are still learning. People are still knowing how to do this. And even if there's goodwill, it'll take a lot of time. The second lesson that I like to share is that funds, and specifically like VCs and impact investment funds, will always say that they're interested. That's their job. They're paid to meet with entrepreneurs, to meet and to bring good proposals to the table for their bosses or partners. So at first they'll always say they're interested because they don't want to miss out on the big opportunity. So just take it as it is. It's the fact that they say that they're interested, it doesn't mean that they're going to invest. So just be careful about that and And remember that it's their job to say yes, and it's your job to get them to give you money. So the faster you can get to the point where they have to decide if they want to invest or not, and to make that decision explicit, the less you'll waste your time. The third lesson, and it has saved a lot of time for us, and it has saved us from a lot of trouble, is being really straightforward about where you're on the spectrum and where you're on this impact versus return on investment equilibrium. So basically, a lot of investors are looking to make money. A lot of them don't care about the money, are looking to make impact. And if you're really straightforward with them from the first meeting and from like the first 10 minutes of that meeting, you can save both investors and yourself a lot of time. And finally, watch the runway. If you're raising money, you might not be focusing all your time on your venture and on your project. And that will mean that you won't be able to raise funds from the sources that you were raising from, or might not be as effective as that. And there's going to be this point when you run out of money, and in that point you're going to be in a position that's going to be hard to negotiate better terms. So you always have to be watching the runway. When is that day that you are going to run out of money, and what are you going to do on that day? And plan everything, and honestly, like, multiply the first time lapse that you plan for by 2 to watch the money, and don't get into that situation where you ran out of money, you haven't closed with investors yet, and you are just willing to take anything that's offered to you. And now, after these lessons, I would also want to share with you what, after having really like 60 or 80 meetings with different investors, what we found that are the keys to success, what they really focus on, and what you should focus on when you're doing that pitch. The first of them is the vision. Especially in the impact investment space, the big vision is the necessary condition. Like, no one will want to invest in something that's small, that isn't aiming on changing the world, and that isn't exciting, or that you aren't passionate about. So getting into the meeting and being really strong and really straightforward with that big vision, I think, is the most important thing. And the reason why is, if we go back to the type of investors, VCs are looking for high risks and high returns. They don't care if 90 of the enterprises or the companies they invest in fail, because they're looking for the next Google or the next Facebook in there. So if you're aiming for something small, they won't be interested, because they know there's high risk, but there isn't a high return if there's a small vision. Impact investors always also want high impact and high social impact. And if you're just focusing on the local solution, or in something that isn't big or scalable, they might not be interested. They might choose another project that is more risky, but has the possibility to have a super, super big impact. And you should see as capital and investment as something to kickstart something that's going to be huge. It's not a short-term solution or something to get by a year or so. It's something to set in motion a series of mechanisms and strategies that will be able to keep growing organically and fast from there. So if your vision is moderate and you're really not looking for something big, you might be looking for something different than investment. You might be looking for a grant, for a loan, for some donations, or to crowdfund a campaign for a project, but not for investors, because there's not going to be a good fit with that. So getting on the table and centering your pitch around this big vision is something that will get investors excited, and is something that's the first rule for getting the conversations going. So basically, you have to communicate what's the world you want to create and how you're going to get there, and make it big and make it ambitious. The second key to success is the team. So from the investor's point of view, okay, so you have this big vision. This is a world we want to create. Why am I giving my money to you to create it? Why am I giving my money to this or to this group of people to achieve that world or that future? And that's the next question that you have to answer. And that question is answered not by talking just about yourself and about how passionate and hardworking you as an entrepreneur are, but about your team. And what has worked really well for us is to share the ability of building a great team and a team of the world's most qualified people to tackle on this huge challenge. And the rationale behind this is that the only way that a person can achieve something as big as the vision you discussed earlier is to bring in people that can do that. And that means bringing in people that are better than you in particular areas. So for example, for me, doing the tech, I studied math, but I brought in the best data analytics people in the country to join OPI and to work with us. And in order to sell it to government, I brought in people that are way better than me to help sell to government and keep the relationships with government. And in that way, if you sell and if you demonstrate that you're capable of attracting the best talent in your region or your country or the world's greatest talent to join you and help you tackle on your challenge, really is the best weapon you can get when building a team or tackling on an issue as big as this one. So just make sure that you sell not just yourself, but your ability to build up a great team. And like the third key to success is traction. So here what investors want to see is that you prove that you and your team are able to execute this. And there's a lot of timing that you have to be careful about here. When will be the right time to get investors on the table? And my advice here is don't raise until you have enough traction. Don't raise when you're still at an idea scale. You don't raise before you proved that you can get some talent, or that if you get the capital, you can attract some talent. Because investors will be like worried about this, about your ability to execute. And that might hurt your valuation, or that might hurt the conversations with investors. The second is under-promise and over-deliver. And always say, like, be very, very modest about what you're doing, what you're going to do, and work as hard as you can to over-deliver. And there's the negotiation and diligence time is the ideal time to actually prove this. Because from the first meeting you're going to have with the investor to the moment that they are going to give you the check, there's going to be at least 3 to 6 months. So you might want to use that time to show them that you're delivering on what you promised. On the first meeting, say, like, what will be your short-term goals, and on the following meetings, just remind them on how you're doing on that. Say, okay, my goal was to reach 10 households. I just reached 15. So we're like managing their expectations, but also showing that you're able to execute what you're doing. On the traction part, the best time, and this seems really obvious, but it's really hard to get there. The best time to get money is when you don't actually need money. Because that way the investors will see that, okay, this guy is doing well on his own. He has a great team. He's doing great. He's keep growing. I want to get on that project. I want to be a part of that. I want to be part of that impact or of that growth. And the best time to get that money then, and the best time to get that feeling from investors is when you don't really need their money, and when you are planning for the future, and when they see it as an opportunity rather than you're in need. And finally, what you have to communicate and the attitude that you have to get in these meetings is that you are going to get there. You're going to fulfill your vision with or without them. If they want to join you and if they want to help you get there, it's going to be great. But if not, you're going to keep going. So they're not crucial. And investors really value this, and they really value persistence, and they don't want to be like the ones responsible for achieving that vision in the end. So as long as you communicate that you're going to keep going and that you're going to be persistent and that you're going to get there and fulfill your vision, it's going to be more likely that they invest in your venture. Okay, so I think that was basically it. I would love to use this time to discuss or further questions or to focus on some of the issues that you might find interesting.
Thank you, Alejandro. I have a couple of questions for you. One of the things that you're talking about here in terms of impact investing rather than just grants is that there is some return. Most impact investors are looking for some return on their investments, even if that's maybe not their focus. And I know from talking with you before, one of the big reasons why you were able to kickstart this and get to the place where you are now is because you had this conversion in the mindset of your venture from having this kind of traditional civic organization, nonprofit organization mindsets to gearing towards a sales-based, revenue-generating social business. I was wondering if you might be able to talk a little bit about that.
Yes, of course, and I would love to share that. So in the end for us, like what's really important is to have an impact and to have better public policy throughout the world that really addresses people's needs and really addresses social problems in an effective manner. And thinking a lot and experimenting with a lot of the traditional models, we saw that, for example, in the past 10 years, and we're really thinking about that, in the past 10 years, the institutions or organizations that have had most profound impact on the world aren't the traditional NGOs or aren't even governments. They are probably Facebook and Google. They have transformed millions of people's lives around the world in a really profound manner. So we thought, okay, so why if we use those models, like those rapid and really tech-based models, to change the world the way we want to? And in order to do so, we had to find a way in which we could grow and be self-sustainable, in which we could manage and be agile and update our strategies as we gathered more information. And the only way to do that was to be self-sustainable and was to switch the model from one in which we gave the platform and everything for free, and then we tried to figure out how to get grants or donations to maintain ourselves and the platform, into one in which we made a really, really good product that governments and institutions would be willing to pay for, that could grow and that could give us back the revenue to build and to attract the best talent to build a better product and to get into that product and build that product in order for it to ensure social impact if we deployed it correctly. And we decided to switch into that mindset and to switch into that strategy around 2 years ago and try to validate if we could build something that people would buy, and if governments bought it, we could still manage to have an impact. And what people thought at first, and what we thought, was like, we're going to lose our independence if we start selling, and because we're going to be answering to a customer. But what we found out was that we were more independent, and we were willing to take our strategy as far as we could and as fast as we could this way, more than with grants or donations, because it allowed us to move quickly, it allowed us to change our strategy, and it allowed us to sell to whoever we wanted, instead of trying to stick with a project or with a grant and execute it for 2 years, even if by the first 3 months or 2 weeks you saw that this wasn't going to work. but since you signed it, you still have to do it. So that was kind of our experience, and it might not work for every issue or for every enterprise, but at least for us, it really made a difference into remaining small and at a local scale, and try to and actually started thinking about global scale and having impact on millions of people from literally 1 year to the next.
Thank you. And I like what you just said about that giving you more flexibility. In terms of the investment, you also kind of mentioned how looking for investors is more flexible than your traditional grant mechanisms. You still have milestones that you have to reach, though, right? Could you talk a little about maybe what the requirements are in a more investment-focused relationship rather than a grant-focused relationship?
Of course. So in an investment-focused relationship, you still have to deliver. And it really depends on which group you're targeting and which group you're getting investment from. But you still have to deliver. It's not like you're going to spend that on whatever you want. What it gives you like a greater flexibility to change your strategies on the way in order to achieve that goal. So with investors, for example, what you want to be clear on is what you're going to deliver on the impact part and on the finance part. So if you're going to deliver sales and you're going to deliver revenue in 2 years, it doesn't matter if you change your product, and it doesn't matter if you change your product 5 or 6 times. It matters that you're going to deliver that revenue in 2 years. If, on the other hand, what you want to get is you want to get like 5 million or 50 million users, it doesn't matter if you sell at a discount or you're more flexible in the revenue part, as long as you achieve that milestone. So basically, and it's a very important part of the negotiation, and it depends where on the spectrum of the impact and finance you are. You have to set really clear goals with your investors. But once you get the money, you're going to be way more flexible on how you're going to attain those goals and be updating your strategy to the best strategy you can find at each specific moment. And that's the main difference from a grant. Like some grants and some donations, really, really, like by the end of the year, you have to prove that you spent $5 on pencils and $63 on gas. And if you didn't do that, then like you're going to be in trouble. So that's a good part on investment, but you still have to deliver.
We have a question from the audience. One of the audience members is asking, do you think there's a value in gaining experience from the traditional model first before moving to a product-oriented revenue generation model?
Definitely, and that's what we did, and that's our experience. And mostly because in order to design a good product and in order to understand how you're going to create that market for your solution, for your social solution, and how you're going to create a product that you can sell, but you can also, but can also generate more impact than your previous model. You have to know you have to know your problem. You have to know the agents involved. You have to know the ecosystem, and you have to try a lot of things. So in that way, going in first with a traditional model I think is a great idea. That's the way we started. And once you get an idea, and once you know what you need to design and to build in order to scale up, the other approach is great. What we did, basically, we started with a model. We learned with that model, with a traditional model. And when we really wanted to scale and when we really wanted to take this to the next level, we switched to a product approach, which would allow us to move quickly and to grow really fast.
Now, talking about the actual investments, it seems like there's really a few different ways to structure your investments, but the largest ones are mostly debt and equity, right? So I was wondering if maybe you could talk a little about your experience in structuring those investments, and especially as you were talking about making sure that your interests are aligned and not losing control. So especially in equity and how you structure, that in a way that you don't risk losing too much control.
Exactly. So, and this depends. This depends on the country. For example, in Mexico, what we wanted to do and what was the best instrument for us was convertible debt, which is basically debt that we acquire from investors, and they have the right to transform it into equity when we get our next round, or or after 2 years, for example. But the Mexican law doesn't allow for that to happen. So we had to build, like from the ground up, another mechanism to get those investors aligned with the right incentives. So in the end, what you really want to focus on is on your interests and the interests of your investors, and make sure that the way you get that money makes both of them aligned. So if you want to keep the best way to keep managing and to keep control of your enterprise is by not giving equity away. But that can also mean that you don't share as much risk as you would want to. The good thing with equity is that you're giving away risk, but you're also giving away control with that risk. So I think another exercise and another spectrum that would be good to design this is how much risk you're willing to take and how much control you're willing to give. And depending on where you want to be there, and depending on where your investors want to be there, you're going to be more on the debt side or on the equity side. And it's really important for you to sit down and talk with investors about this, to talk to other entrepreneurs, even if they're even if they aren't social entrepreneurs, to see what they've used and what mechanisms have worked out. But that's just the means into translating like this balance between risk and control into an actual legal mechanism. But the main questions you want to be asking yourself is, if you want to give away control in order to give away risk, take equity. If you don't want to give away control and you're willing to take on more risk, give out debt. And there's a lot of instruments in the middle of those that can find the right balance for you and your investors.
Thank you. We have another audience question from a participant in India who's asking, in India, generally governments invest in development projects, but whenever there's a change of the officials or in the departments, money stops flowing or comes erratically. So how do you handle a situation, how do you handle this kind of situation when the project is in a kind of middle intermediate phase?
Right. And we have that exact same problem in Mexico, that there are some government programs that give money to entrepreneurs and to social programs, but you really don't know when that's going to finish, and you really don't know if that money is going to stop flowing. So what we decided to do, well, what I would recommend is to diversify your sources. So it's great to have money from governments because most of the time it's really cheap money. That means you get the money without giving a lot of control or equity or interest back. But on the other hand, it might be risky to take that, to depend only on that money. So what I would recommend is that to get that money as soon as you can. Well, once you get it, diversify your sources of income for the following months and years, knowing that that money might stop flowing. And if that happens, you still want to have at least 30% of your revenues coming from somewhere else. And so that would be my first advice, like get money and then start looking for NGOs or like donations from individuals or investment from angels or VCs or foundations, and also try to start building, if the project allows for it, to start building sustainable revenue models that allow you to grow without depending on governments or other institutions to give you money to survive.
Great. One of the things that you were talking about, whether your investors are in the public sector, government institutions, or VCs or foundations, one of the things that you had talked about in your presentation was that you want to find the right investors, that you should find investors that share your vision or that share your preference for social impact or return on investment. But this whole area of impact investing is kind of a new space. People are defining it differently and looking at it differently. Has your experience been that you really just have to find the right investor with the right perspective, or is there an element of educating an investor or talking with an investor to kind of influence or shape the way that they are thinking about their investment in your social venture?
That's a great question, Eric, and it's been both for us. And as you said, like we are still defining what impact investment is and what impact investment will look like in the next years. So, for example, in Mexico and in the U.S., for most of the investors we approached, it was the first time that they saw a project like ours. And some of them were really straightforward and were really concentrated and said, like, okay, it's a great project, but we only invest in base of the pyramid solutions. And that's okay, and you have to be really honest about it. But for most of them, they said, like, okay, I had never seen anything like this, but we can look deeper into it and see and figure out this balance of how they're having a social impact and how we can get like returns on the investment that you have. So in that case, it's really important for you, like for the entrepreneur, to have a really clear explanation and to have what their theory of change and how that impact can translate into like making better like millions of people's lives specifically. And on the other hand, like be also really honest about what you still don't know, because with these new projects and new models, most of the times you're innovating, and when you're innovating, there are a lot of unknowns on the way. So you have to be really honest from day one on what you know, on what you're trying to validate, on what you're pursuing, and on what you don't know, and where you might pivot and where you might change if your first strategy doesn't work, or you find a way to make more impact. So in that case, looking for investors who know that innovation comes together with uncertainty, and that there's some things that you will not be able to plan for, but that you're willing to experiment and you're willing to try out, is the most important. So having the right, having really honest and straightforward conversations with investors, and finding investors who understand your quest and how you're going to get there, and who most of all, like really are aligned with your vision, not with your strategy. And that's why I like what's more important is the vision, not the strategy or the plan. That goes, but like that most probably will change. But if investors are aligned with your vision, and they're willing to take the risk, and they know that there are some things that might change, but that you're going to do everything in your hands to reach that vision, then you can start designing the mechanisms and really start a conversation that will benefit both of you. Because in the end, like there's not a recipe, and the ecosystem is still too young to have figured out like every single approach. So there's still a lot of innovation that can be done in this space.
Thank you. I just have one more question. I know that when you're talking about traditional investments in more traditional spaces, valuations are made based on your assets or your predicted sales. How how are valuations made on impact investing when part of the thing you're investing in is going to be some sort of intangible social impact as opposed to pure dollars and cents?
Right, and that's a great question, because basically it's more an art than a science. So everyone will have their means to evaluating, and everyone will have this strategy or this Excel sheet where they evaluate. But in the end, I think it's all negotiation. And what I've seen is that most valuations come more from, okay, so this is how much money I'm raising, and this is how much I'm willing to give to you. So the valuation is basically to multiply, the first for the inverse of the second. So multiply the investment you want for how much equity you're willing to give, and like that's how valuable your company is right now, or your enterprise is right now. And because it's really hard to evaluate, especially in early stage. Now, if you already have revenues and if you already have a validated business model, you can aim for a higher valuation. But what I would recommend is really don't spend that much time arguing about the valuation, especially if you're getting smart money, if you're getting money from people who share your vision and who understand the risks and are willing to put that money in. So don't really worry about that, as long as it's not for the majority of the enterprise. So like a rule of thumb here is that if it's the first round you raise, basically they're going to give you the money that you want, and they're going to get back around 30% of your enterprise. And that's what most of the funds of the VCs are expecting. And at this yet, when you still have to validate your business and revenue model, when you have some traction, but it isn't enough to prove what you're getting, most people use that rule of thumb. But basically, I wouldn't worry a lot about the valuation at the early stage, because in the end, if it's about the impact and if it's something that big, it won't really matter in the long run. But what does matter is to get the right people and the right partners who share your vision in, so you can keep building with them. So it's better to focus on getting the right partners and on getting the right amount of money, rather than on giving on like arguing or negotiating for 2 or 3% of your venture.
Great, thank you. Well, I don't know if there's any other questions from the audience, but if not, I'm just going to close up the webinar now. Just a really quick reminder for everybody. Before you sign out, there's a very, very short 2-question survey. Please help us to fill that out so that we can know how to make improvements on the webinar series. We have Alejandro's contact information here. If you would like to contact him or ask him any questions offline, or seek any more guidance, or just find out more about what his venture is and what they do. Also, we have contact information for us here at YouthActionNet. If you'd like to find out more about YouthActionNet, please feel free to contact us or look us up at our Facebook and our website. Thank you very much, Alejandro, for taking the time to be with us here today and to share your knowledge and your expertise.